This is just a quick part two to what I just posted about accountability. Just breaking down where that paradigm comes from. When I said that it's the idea that you get to take your power back, it has a lot to do with being in the paradigm of being puppeteered. So the whole thing with I am bad, I get treated bad, the whole toxic shame with that arises from the framework that the amount of love you receive is controlled. The way that you think is controlled. The emotions you got to feel as a result was heavily controlled when you were younger. So accountability, when I said the thing about taking back the reins, it has a lot to do with coming out of the paradigm of being puppeteered and controlled. And I wanted to break that down a little bit further because I didn't really explain it a lot in the last video before I went on some other points. But accountability is simply saying I'm stepping back into my power. It's going from the paradigm of you control me to I control myself. It's going from the paradigm of, well, I get pulled every which way and I need to watch and respond to and be a victim and be a reactor of what energy is happening around me, because that is what you had to do when you were younger, especially if you came from a background of abuse. Your safety was dependent on bending your will to another person and actually being puppeteered. If you weren't puppeteered, you weren't surviving, you know? So I wanted to really drive this point home in the second part of the video, because it's almost heroic to be functioning in this sort of way when you're in survival mode, and then accountability just says, hey, I'm not in survival mode anymore. But your body and your mentality and your emotions, honestly, they fight and do everything they can to keep you alive. And that is why we get these maladaptive behaviors. That's why people need therapy later, because the longer you condition yourself to function in that way, the more aid and the more tools you're going to need later to not function in that way. Because the longer you have to endure those sorts of things, the more your body and your mind and your emotions get automated to run that program or that paradigm. So that's why a lot of people have to receive some kind of help in their adulthood, or receive some kind of education or tools in their adulthood to undo that, because a lot of us spent a really long time in our childhood being automated to run in this way, being automated to be dependent on somebody else's behavior, or to be ran by somebody else's behavior, or to be responsive or reactive to the people in power in our life when we were children or when we were young adults, because their power really is in their hands and you really are vulnerable and naive at that age. So you have to be puppeteered to a degree in order to live and to survive. So when you take accountability, you're saying this evil puppeteer that misused me is no longer in my life, and now I have the ability to do what I want. It's the simple ability to recognize your freedom after recognizing your oppression. So again, the whole thing with both truths being happening at the same time. There's the truth of I was misused, I was a victim, and then there's the truth happening at the same time of I'm not a victim anymore. I have power now. And you can recognize both of those things at the same time, and there's honor in that. And then as far as releasing that sort of shame, because it takes a lot of work. You can't take accountability until you guys release that shame. And it's important to do the work to release shame and to release guilt, so you can get to the point where you can accept accountability without feeling those feelings, so they won't block you from that sensation anymore. And then once you get to accountability, and then you get to all the changes and the new paradigm adaptations and things like that, that's where you can get to the green state, where you're constantly feeling the love, the joy, and the peace and all of that, and manifestations start coming, and you know, all this other stuff. But as far as backtracking a little bit, accountability will become much easier for you if you first don't even worry about taking accountability. It's coming later and you have to do that. But don't worry about that portion yet. Your first step is to treat the toxic shame and to go into those childhood experiences and start writing down the thoughts that you had. It's one thing that helped me was to place myself back in those situations with that parent and my other parent as well, but like particularly me, it was with my father, and go through some of the day-to-day situations or some of the abusive situations that I endured and think about what I was feeling in that moment. And a lot of it had to do with fear and trying to save myself or say the right thing or do the right thing to save myself. And then how my esteem was during that time, how my identity was during that time, how I felt about the way my parents looked at me, how I felt about what I thought. Did I think that they loved me? What did I think they thought about my personality and all that? And there were a lot of shameful things that got brought up. And I literally wrote down all the thoughts that younger me was having. And a lot of the time you'll see that reflected in the thoughts that you have towards a significant other or your family now or close friends now, where some subconscious things might come up. Like for me, I thought when I first met my best friend that her and her family like pitied me or didn't actually want to take care of me. And I found out years later, you know, I've known them for 8 or 9 years now. And now that we've had more conversations, you know, I realized they helped me because they loved me, and they constantly remind me of that to this day. But I've talked with my best friend Ashley about this a lot. When I first stepped into their household and they helped me in a way that nobody in my life had ever helped me, my paradigm was still the same as when I was a kid. It's, you know, they don't really want me here. They don't really care about me. They secretly don't like me, things like that. I had paradigms like that playing in my mind. And I felt rejected by them, and I felt scared that they were going to misuse me or kick me out, or, you know, just various things. I had a lot of these irrational fears, and they're the most loving people I've ever met in my life. I can say that beyond a doubt. And they have accepted me as family at this point. And again, it's been 8 or 9 years. And now that I've had more healing, I've come to the realization that everything that was going on underneath that was just pure love from them and pure acceptance. And they wanted me to be part of their family, and they were excited to have me and things like that, you know? So once you flip that script, it becomes much easier to walk forward and accept what may be considered negative things about yourself, or things you might criticize about yourself, or areas where people tell you you need improvement, or whatever it is. So criticism and accountability almost becomes second nature after you backtrack and you go back to all of those old stories you're telling yourself from when you were misused as a child or a young adult. And it's really important to do the work associated with that. Taking accountability, in order to do that, you're really going to kind of need to ignore taking accountability for a little bit until you can journal and do the shadow work, or, you know, whatever therapy, whatever your thing is. And you put the attention on toxic shame and guilt first and alleviate those feelings first. And then go do new experiences or be around new people or have vulnerable discussions with people that cultivate the feeling of acceptance and positivity and beauty and fun and joy and all of those things. So when you have new experiences that cultivate new feelings, like a lot of manifestation gurus will tell you, that helps tremendously. So you want to release the old and then fill that void with something new, and then it becomes easier to move into accountability and acceptance and responsibility and all of that good stuff. So I just wanted to break that down in this video because it's important to zero in on that topic. And one tool that you can use to do this is journaling and going into the mind of younger you and writing down everything that you think, just unbridled opinion and unfiltered thoughts. And you'll be surprised at what comes up. I always thought I was a very confident woman, and I am. And when I went into what was buried, there were a lot of negative things that I needed to clear, and it surprised me because on a day-to-day basis, I don't really think like that, but that's why we